Okay, good morning. Let's get started. On behalf of Yale's Program in Agrarian Studies, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the conference, Industrial Livestock Production, Fish Farming, Global Climate Change, and Global Health. The program in Agrarian Studies at Yale is a radically interdisciplinary effort to reshape how scholars understand rural life and society. We are convinced that the only way to loosen the nearly hegemonic grip of the separate disciplines on how questions are framed and answered is to concentrate on themes of signal importance to several disciplines. By building a sustained community of interdisciplinary conversation and by demonstrating what creative trespassing can accomplish, we hope to set a standard of integrative work that will act as a magnet. Today's conference, which brings together scholars and practitioners from diverse areas, is of course an example. I'd like to thank our co-sponsor, the Law, Ethics, and Animals program of Yale Law School, and the Brooks Institute for Animal Rights, Law, and Policy for financial support. As you know, we have a full program. We'll have our opening remarks by Jim Scott. We will then turn to the world premiere of the Feral Atlas. Thank you very much, Anna, which is an interactive platform on feral species. Then we have our 2 sessions as well as discussions along the way. We'll take a half-hour lunch break, which will be also an opportunity to explore the Atlas. We also have a full house. We have 80 participants. Fantastic. With so many participating, we need some ground rules. So they are these, at least to start. If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, please post a brief version in a private chat. So at the beginning of each session, we will, one of us, the organizers and moderators, will send a message saying, questions for this session, come to me. And if you want to share references and so on, that you will also see a chat from someone else saying, references you'd like to share with the group later after the conference should come to me, okay? So we will mute everyone. So please turn it on when you're called on by the moderator. So what will be happening in the background is the curator of the chat will be organizing the discussion, grouping questions together, and then perhaps deciding that it's time for a return to the original topic or whatever it is. So the curator will be feeding that input to the person moderating the session. So the idea here is, to be really clear, this is not in the least an effort to control the conversation, but rather to aspire to an intellectually coherent one with now 87 participants. That remains our goal. So just another note, we will record and post the sessions with the exception of any part of it that the speakers prefer not to be posted, but we will not be posting the Q&A. So if you don't want to be part of that eventual online posting, you should turn off your video now. And we look forward to a constructive discussion of the most compelling issues of our time, one respectful even as we trace disagreements. I'll turn it over now to organizer Timothy Pachirat.
Great, thanks, Libby. Good morning, everyone. As Libby said, my name is Timothy Pachirat. I work as an associate professor of political science at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I'm also the author of a book that was published in the Yale Agrarian Studies series that's entitled Every 12 Seconds, Industrialized Slaughter and the Politics of Sight. As one of the 3 co-organizers of this conference, it's my pleasure to join Libby in welcoming all of you here today and to introduce our first speaker, who is Jim Scott. Now, Jim Scott is the founding director of Yale's program on agrarian studies and works on political economy, comparative agrarian societies, theories of hegemony and resistance, peasant politics, revolution, Southeast Asia, theories of class relations, and anarchism. Jim is the author of many signal books in the social sciences, including Weapons of the Weak, Domination and the Arts of Resistance, Seeing Like a State, and 2 cheers for anarchism. Perhaps most germane to this particular conference, however, is Jim's latest book, Against the Grain, which is a history of how the earliest agrarian states emerged. I turn things over now to Jim for opening remarks.
Thank you, Tim, and welcome to all of you as well. The point of having a conference is to learn something that we don't know from people who are smarter than we are. And so I will be brief in the effort to not get in the way of the conference proceedings. I thought I would make just 3 brief points that strike me as I framed the readings that I did for this conference. The first is how massive domestication of animals has been, how enormously it has transformed the landscape of the world, and finally, how amazingly recent it has all been. On the first question of how massive domestication has been, I was struck by the figures presented by Václav Smil. It's a very strange calculus, but he tried to calculate the metric tons of wild animals vis-a-vis the metric tons of domesticated animals. Don't ask me about the methodology, it's complicated, and it didn't have anything to do with marine life, I might add, nor did it have anything to do with Homo sapiens. But in his calculation, the metric tons of domesticated flesh in the world is 9 times the metric tons of wild flesh. So if you wanted to ask yourself how much we've transformed the world and how much of the living things, the fauna in the world, are creatures of domestication and our products, that's all you have to know. Even if he's off by a small factor of 1 or 2, it's an enormously powerful statistic, I find. The other point I wanted to make is that much of our landscape is devoted to the care and feeding and so on of these domesticated animals. That is to say, if you look at the corn and soybean landscapes of middle America, these are mostly intended to feed domesticated animals by and large, or to export abroad to feed domesticated animals. And the insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, GMOs, and so on, that have replaced wild flora, I think you could argue that if Václav Smil had turned his attention to the ratio of domesticated flora to the wild flora, we would also have a stunning statistic in terms of the predominance of domesticated flora. So that world has been transformed as well. The final point, I guess, I've been struck by my growing understanding of what exponential growth means in terms of an empty world becoming a full world. And I owe to Herman Daly the summarization that I'm going to just convey to you, which is that between 1900 and 2000, the world population quadrupled roughly. And the material production in the world expanded 36-fold. So what's extraordinary is that what's called the Great Acceleration has happened actually in a kind of second of the time of Homo sapiens on Earth. And we have gone from a relatively capacious and world full of resources that had yet to be exploited, to a full world going on 8 billion people and a level of material production that uses most of those resources up very quickly. That's all I have to say. I can't wait to hear both the discussion and the interventions by the speakers, and I'll turn it over to Elisabeth Wood again.